This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
We've all seen the mugshot, the blank stare, the courtroom sketches, the headlines, but what if the scariest part of Bryan Kohberger isn't exactly what he did, but the story he was allegedly telling himself before he ever did it? That's where this case goes from disturbing to disorienting. Because in the newest batch of unsealed documents, we're getting a clearer picture of how a deep fantasy life may have gone, just how deep it may have gone. The police scanner searches, the fixation on knives, the creepy Tinder messages about the worst way to die. Some of you are going, I might ask that. Not everyone is a true crimer. And of course, the ID cards. Not from the victims, but from other women, stored like artifacts in a glove box. A glove box in a car that authorities described as being dismantled to be cleaned. But he left those in the glove box. That's not convenience, that's intention. And it's not just behavior, it's narrative. It's the creation of a world in his head where power isn't taken violently until it has to be. So how does that kind of inner world grow? How do fantasy, control, and obsession build until they cross into reality? How does someone go from fascination with crime to participation? In this part of our series, I'm talking again with Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author of The Minds of Mass Killers. This is the book. Get it wherever books are sold. We're going to map the psychology behind Kohberger's fantasy life, how it might have started, how it sustained him, and how it might have made sense to him, even as it unraveled everyone else's lives. Let's get into it. The ID cards were another thing that really came up here. And this is something that early on we had heard rumors about, that there were ID cards found in a glove box. It was never fully confirmed. It was kind of through channels here and there. Well, it's real. There were ID cards. And just as it was relayed back then, they weren't of the victims in the house. They were of other people. Someone that he likely went to school with. Actually, two people that he likely had gone to school with at different points and different times. None of them seem to have reported their card missing, or if they did, like most do, you just, go get a new one. You don't think it's in the glove box of someone who's going to be a homicidal maniac. But let's talk about that. The ID cards, these are people that are alive. They don't have anything to report on Kohberger in terms of predatory behavior, at least not that we know of. What is going on here with that, with just having these cards, although they're not his victims?
One of my terms I go back to all the time is associational cues. And this is some kind of object. We all use associational cues, hopefully in positive ways. But, when we put up a picture of our kids or our spouse on our desk, it's because it makes us have emotions that we feel close to them in response to this tangible object. And so to me, the ID cards speak of the desire to possess the object, the person, and to have a sense of control and power. And if you look at the symbology of your ID cards, there's almost this little element of I own you, I possess you, I've got you. And certainly it fed his fantasy life, which is really troubling.
I don't think there's ever really a great excuse for having someone else's ID card in your possession in any way, shape, or form. Unless they're like, here, hold this for me while I go on the water slides. That's about it. It's like, I'm holding them for the water slides. They forgot them. That's not, I'm sure, what this was whatsoever. Let's go back to the fantasy life a little bit. I want to talk about that. I mean, how central is a fantasy life in the development of mass killers? I mean, not just Kohberger. We don't know a ton about what was going on in that fantasy world of his. But when you dig into these people as a whole, obviously there's the fantasy, the perverse fantasies that they're having. But is there a wider world of fantasy within people like this typically? One that doesn't maybe even go to the aspect of violence or horrible behavior? Is it kind of a atmosphere that they live in, and that's just one of the many facets of it.
That's a good question, and the thing that I can say we definitely know is they have fantasies of wanting to be famous, grandiose ideas about
Mhm.
themselves. Do they have fantasies for a sexual domination killer, do they have fantasies outside of the urge to be famous and, of course, their violent fantasies about murder and rape and all these other things? I don't think we have data on that. It's a good question. To what extent do they live in an alternate reality or in their own world? I think that's one we'll have to look into more.
I mean, it does make you wonder. It would make it, I guess, maybe easier to fall in and out of more extreme fantasies if you're already living at a certain level there. Kohberger also allegedly sent a Tinder message asking about the worst way to die. Um, Not exactly what I think a lot of people would be communicating through Tinder. I mean, I don't know, maybe if you get in a weird conversation or something, but this doesn't seem like it was that. More like, hey, how's your day? What's the worst way to die? Just kind of little out there. What does that tell you about his interactions or his skill at interacting with others um, through something like that?
Yeah, you could sure say that was leakage, somebody who's like saying these things about their inner world that the rest of us would go, that's kind of odd, that's
Hmm.
different. But he had this quality of being very odd, but just functional enough to make it through the world for the most part, whereas some people that are really mentally ill, mentally ill in the sense of psychotic, delusional hallucinations. Everybody can spot it. They're not functional. But Kohberger was functional enough, but leaking these little odd things. And yeah, whether the diagnosis of autism is the best fit, it's possible that it is. We don't know that without evaluating him. Schizoid personality, which is a person who doesn't connect normally with other people. He certainly had OCD,
Hmm.
and that's something that's still happening for him. But yeah, in all these qualities together, it created this very odd social style that's apparent in a text like that, and that he was very focused on death. I
Hmm.
mean, why would you ask somebody that unless you were thinking about it a lot?
Yeah, I mean that leakage that comes through. Really, I mean, it certainly says a lot about what's going on when he's leaking these things out in these conversations. Is he aware that it's so off-putting and bizarre to the rest of the world to say that sort of stuff? Or is he like kind of fishing for another like him that maybe is into, more dark ways of thinking about the world?
That's an interesting hypothesis that he's looking for a soulmate who's just
Yeah.
like him. Yeah, could be. But I think he's probably clueless that this is going to be off putting to people.
Hmm.
And that's just, whatever is going on with his brain that makes him a unique animal. Empathy is not a part of it. The ability to sense how other people respond to us, he just doesn't get it.
You think there's more IDs out there? Do you think because it seemed like that was a bit of a collection he was putting there in his glove box, and it makes you wonder. I've been wondering for a while if there's a knife buried in a little cash box somewhere along his trip, because we do look at the vehicle data and it does show him stopping off at like wooded areas, where I would not be surprised. And Rob and Drake and me are going to talk about that this week about where could this weapon possibly be? And what else could be in this little, as BTK would have called it, hidey hole?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I'm wondering how much more of that might be at play here that we are not yet aware of with Kohberger that's not going to come through these documents, but just is still out there in the ether.
Probably tons of secret items, things that he had collected throughout his adolescence years. And who knows where it all is or what's been destroyed. And of course, I'm very curious about the content of his computer and what evidence he may have kept there.
And that's a shocking thing because the content of the computer and all of his digital devices, the shocking part, nothing. They have come back and they have said there is nothing here. They believe it was wiped. that
Yeah.
that he found a way to wipe everything off. So there's traces of that. So he was, and that's what's so interesting to me about this character is he was very smart in some areas. Like they believe he was literally wiping things as he went. It wasn't like okay, tonight's the night. Let's go back through history and delete everything from X date to X date. It was kind of like, as he's doing this, he's going to wipe that right after he looked at it and so forth. He was so meticulous in some of these details. He was meticulous enough not to leave any of him behind other than the sheath. He was meticulous enough to clean his car, so much so that they described it as being disassembled. Yet he left people's IDs that were not his. I can't say victims, but people's IDs that were not his in his glove box to be found. I mean, is that just like, okay, you're really smart over here, but you're a complete idiot over here, and there's something not telling you, better empty that glove box too? Or does he think, well, that's not valuable to anybody. I didn't kill those people. I mean, what the hell? What is going on here? Is it just like shit, I missed that?
I think you're seeing maybe an aspect of his OCD that he honed in on certain kinds of things. Obviously, he was very aware of DNA and blood and that kind of evidence. And he just became obsessed with certain things while being relatively clueless about other things like the IDs in the glove box. That seems obvious.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, he's got this unique brain that goes to obsessions about certain things without looking at the big picture.
With the IDs, I mean, being a form of trophy there, is that the sort of thing that kind of, you would say, maybe led him up to being able to do this? Like, does it start small? Does it start with, I'm going to take this ID from this woman and that's going to make me feel powerful or whatever the hell it makes him feel? And then it's like, I got another one. Like, well, and it just amps up to where you end up slaughtering them one night. I mean, is that what is part of a slow build, or had he not been caught, would he just kind of been out there every once in a while grabbing IDs as well, just part of his MO?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was part of a behavioral progression. And originally, when he first started doing things like that or monitoring people, I'm going to guess that he was a voyeur when he was out driving around at night looking at the stars. He was probably peeping in windows too. You know, that's a really common behavior with people like this. And, they never just get up one day and go from being a normal, healthy person with a normal sex life to, I'm going to commit rape, murder, and, do horrible things. There's always this progression. So my guess is that and probably all kinds of things that he did that were weird and creepy that we'll never know about.
It's one thing to say someone had a dark imagination. It's another thing entirely to watch that imagination come to life and realize no one saw it forming. What Shavaun laid out here is critical. The internal fantasy isn't just where it starts, it's where it lives. Until someone decides to act on it. Kohberger didn't allegedly commit murder out of rage or revenge or desperation. He allegedly did it with purpose, and more chillingly, with preparation. This wasn't just a crime, it was a storyline, and like most stories, it had character roles. The watcher, the chosen, the silent observer, with the ending already written in his head. But what happens when someone lives in a mental script where domination, control, and narrative authority are their only sources of validation? What happens when trophies become part of the plot, when stalking becomes rehearsal, when criminology becomes fuel? The answer may look a lot like this case. We talk so much about motive, but sometimes motive isn't found in a single trigger. It's embedded in the private fantasy that no one else gets to read, unless we learn how to look for it. There's more ahead. Right now, the biggest question we're left with is this. If someone builds a world in their head where they get to play God, who's going to stop them before the script becomes real? Let me know your answers and your thoughts in the comments section on our YouTube channel. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski to join us there, or make that same search on the podcast platforms if you want to take us on the go in audio form. We are there for you as well. Check it out. Until next time, my name is Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.